Hi guys, the right-wing media knows its audience and therefore understands that it can get away with either leaving out important information in a report or just telling barefaced lies. While the Tories are trying to move on from the disaster surrounding the baby Stockholm and the small boats and instead speak about the NHS for some reason, GB News will continue to look for scapegoats instead of laying the blame for the asylum crisis at the door of who is ultimately responsible, Suella Braverman. Here they blame roll the dice, the French. Have a listen to this.
Good afternoon. Now, we cannot singularly be to blame for people dying in the Channel. It is not all Britain's fault. It is a huge tragedy that people have lost their lives, and it is something that should never have happened. But this isn't all Britain's fault, and we shouldn't allow that to be the narrative.
No one's saying it's all Britain's fault, but the charities and the so-called lefty lawyers are asking for safe routes. They're saying if you set up safe routes, then people won't need to cross the Channel in a dinghy. And the French themselves have said that if you want to set up a processing centre in Calais, we're happy to do that. But the British government have said no, and they have refused to create safe routes for asylum seekers to arrive in the United Kingdom from certain countries. So whose fault is that?
There is an argument to say that Britain's biggest fault in all of this is a lack of deterrent.
Deterrents don't work. Phil from A Different Bias made a wonderful point a few days ago when he was talking about this. And he said, the majority of people arriving from Middle Eastern countries or Central Africa have never heard of Suella Braverman or Rishi Sunak or the baby Stockholm barge or what the Home Office have been doing. So these things don't work as a deterrent. People have never heard of them. They just say, I want to get to Britain. This is what I understand about Britain. They don't follow the news. And a lot of these things are not even covered outside the United Kingdom. Never mind in countries where people are claiming asylum from.
Being too nice. We are hardly processing any asylum claims. We're not deporting anyone. The RNLI is picking up the vast majority of boats, and we're not letting people stay in squalid tent cities like the French. So that could encourage people to take the journey across the Channel. But we have to have a look at what the French are doing in all of this. 480 million quid we've given them. Well, they are happy for migrants to be in horrendous camps riddled with...
No, they're not. They do not want migrants to stay in these camps. They have destroyed these camps on a number of occasions. They get rebuilt because the asylum seekers don't want to stay in France. Why is this so difficult for people to understand? The vast majority of asylum seekers in France claim it in France. A very small minority don't want to claim asylum in France. They want to claim it in the United Kingdom. That's why they're staying in these camps. The French try and get rid of them. Then they're rebuilt. They destroy them. They get rebuilt. These people don't want to claim asylum in France. The French government have offered them asylum. They say, no, we want to go to the United Kingdom. How is this the French's fault?
With disease and freezing cold in winter. Can you imagine if Britain did that? We are not the bad guys in that situation.
But the people don't want to stay in France. And the British government don't want them either. So they're caught between a rock and a hard place.
The French treat these people worse than we do. The French also have a policy of essentially escorting these boats out, shadowing them, because they say that it would endanger the lives of those on board if they push them back.
Yes, it is dangerous to push back boats. Can you imagine a military vessel trying to push back a dinghy? What do you think would happen to the dinghy? It would go under, it would capsize, and people would lose their lives. That's why the French Coast Guard and the military there don't want to push back boats, because it's dangerous. No military wants to do that. Like, it's some sort of fantasy within these people's minds, the people who watch GB News and host it, but it's not a reality. The Navy, the British Navy, the French Navy don't want to do this. It's because it risks lives. We're talking, just imagine a warship or a Coast Guard vessel trying to push back a dinghy when it has people on it who don't want to stay in France. They want to get to the United Kingdom.
Or approach them. But this guarantees that migrants will end up out in the middle of the Channel. We all hear, don't we, about the boat that capsized and the 7 or so deaths. But You know, before that, there had actually been 7 incidents of migrants being rescued from the water in recent days. The French say that it would endanger lives to push them back, but it is endangering lives to let them go.
What's the alternative? If it's going to risk people's lives pushing them back, and there's less of a risk if you just let them go to where they want to go, the vast majority of these dinghies arrive. Not saying this is a good idea. Of course, it's a terrible idea to go by dinghy, but if the majority of them get through and a minority of them sink, then people are going to take that chance.
And obviously, we've got the human traffickers to blame as well, haven't we? They are now cramming around 70 people on each boat. I mean, this lot absolutely do not care about the loss of life either here or in the Mediterranean.
And the best solution to this would be to create safe routes, because then you close down that business overnight. Because people wouldn't be paying thousands of euros to a people smuggler if they could just get on a plane or get on a ferry.
But I must admit, I was very surprised this morning to see images of people continuing to queue to get on these boats. I was surprised to see them doing it the last time that there was a mass loss of life in the Channel. Britain has messed up. The French have messed up. The human traffickers are also, of course, to blame. But Britain cannot be held entirely responsible for people who deliberately and knowingly put themselves in a ridiculously dangerous situation and a deadly situation, like getting in a boat and sailing across the Channel just days after people have died doing the exact same thing.
Why do you think they do that? They believe that they're eventually going to arrive in the United Kingdom. There's a massive amount of risk there, but they balance out the risk with arriving in the United Kingdom. That's where they want to be. Why is this so difficult for people to understand? Because if you stay in France, you could eventually be removed and sent back to the country that you're fleeing from. But if you have language skills and you want to be in Britain, if you have family and you want to be in Britain, you have connections in Britain and you want to be there, then that's what you're going to do. You're not going to stay in France. If there's an opportunity to cross the Channel and get into Britain, then you're going to do that. If you create safe routes, you close down the people smugglers, you cut off their money supply, and you save lives. Why do the right-wingers keep saying we want to save lives, but we don't want to save lives at the same time? We want to save lives, but we don't want to create safe routes. Because they sell it as some sort of pull factor. Well, if we create safe routes, then everyone will come. No, only the people who want to be in Britain. As I said before, the vast majority of asylum seekers in France have claimed asylum in France. They're not wanting to arrive in the United Kingdom. But this is the narrative the right-wing spin. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.